thin cut, crispy fried catfish. Right now in Louisiana, we're in a season called Lent, which is traditional to a lot of the Catholic roots in New Orleans and throughout Louisiana, which means per tradition, during Fridays, we're eating a lot of seafood, and this is a great one any time of year, but in particular during now. So we absolutely love catfish here in Louisiana, and frying it simply is one of the best ways to serve it. And it's just a couple of simple techniques that we can do that's going to make it come out absolutely perfect. Let's jump in. Of course, we got some wonderful fresh catfish right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to slice it extremely thin and a bit long so it gets a really great coating. And whenever we quickly fry it, it's going to fry up crispy, have a great crunch on the outside. Let me show you how I do it. So we start with the catfish fillet. And of course, you can fry the whole fillet. We can cut it up several different ways. But what I'm looking to do is kind of cut it at a slight angle to get these thin, long strips. And so we're going to just cut through this just like that. Trying to keep it thin. So what we're looking to do is maximize that surface area of the crust on the outside of the catfish. So whenever we fry it, it's really crispy on the outside. Just like that. Now, once we have the catfish slice, we're going to make a really quick breading, and we're actually just going to make it in a bag. You can use a Ziploc. Of course, you could put all these ingredients in a bowl and just mix them there, but watch how easy this is. In this bag, we're going to start off with good old cornmeal. And what's great about this too is it's actually gluten-free because there's no flour or anything like that in here. So I got my cornmeal, and then all we're going to do is season this up a little bit of cayenne pepper. If you don't want spice, just put a little bit of just use the black pepper and the salt, because here we go in with black pepper and some salt. But use this recipe as a guideline. It's no hard or fast rules. It's not a scientific experiment where you have to have the measurements perfectly. All of our palates are different. So I want you to go, if you like it spicy, you can add more. If you don't like spice at all, take that cayenne pepper out of it. It's going to be perfect, your preference. Now we got all those little simple ingredients, the cornmeal, salt, pepper, cayenne. That's it. We're going to put it in here and just give it a good shake. And that's what's going to mix all this up. It's fun too. I got my girls at home. Get the kids involved. They're going to love this. Now we're going to come back to our catfish. Now we want to, when working with the catfish, and in particularly anytime we're frying anything, we want to work fairly quickly. We pulled this out of the refrigerator and we want to keep it ice cold. I'm going to pour just a little bit of ice cold milk over this and let it sit for just a second and allow that to, this is what's going to help that crust stick together. But we're not looking for a heavy coating, thin, crispy. That's what's going to make it perfect. Just make sure it all gets mixed up. And now we're ready to start putting the catfish into this bag and get it dredged. So we want to take the catfish off, give it a little shake, getting rid of any of that excess moisture. If it's too wet, it's going to make clumps in the bag, and we don't want that. So let's get that catfish in there. We're going to close up this bag, and this is where the magic happens. Just going to shake it up. Shake it up real good. All that flavor, that cornmeal is going to coat the outside of this catfish, and when we fry it up, it's going to be really crispy. Now let's move over to our fryer. I want to talk about this just very briefly. Of course, at home, a lot of people, when they get started frying, they'll oftentimes, a great way just to get started is you could put a pot on the stove, add some oil. You want to use a thermometer to gauge your temperature of oil so you know how hot your oil is. You heat it up because we're going to be frying at 350 degrees. That 350 degrees is critical. It's the perfect temperature for frying. However, it's very important that anytime we fry, we want to keep that consistent temperature. That's why I often recommend, if you think about doing any deep frying at home, buy yourself a little tabletop fryer. In fact, I bought this one specifically to demonstrate that it's very entry level. This is literally one of the cheapest ones you can buy at any big box store, probably about $25. And what's great about it is I have a thermostat right here. so I don't have to, it regulates its temperature. I set it to 350 degrees. When the light goes off, it lets me know the oil's come to temperature, done. Don't have to think about it. It's hot. Whenever I add my seafood into here, it's going to kick back on and start frying, and the temperature, which will drop the temperature of your oil, but the thermostat will kick back on, allowing it to heat back up again. It's going to control the temperature for you. You don't have to think about it, which is perfect. So now we're ready to start to fry. So oil's at 350 degrees, good to go. I got my catfish in here. Now look, now what we're going to do, start to dig out your catfish pieces. Any excess, give it a slight little shake carefully into that hot oil. If you don't get that sizzle when you put it in, just stop, because we have to let that oil come up to temperature. If the oil's not up to temperature, well, what's going to happen is it's not going to fry, and you're going to wash off that coating, and we don't want that. Couple tips: anytime we're frying, clean oil is critical. Always use fresh, because what happens is if you reuse your oil, there's going to be little burnt bits in there. Well, little burnt bits taste bitter. It's going to give your oil off flavor, and which is then going to give your food off flavor, and we don't want that. Another thing is, every time I add a piece of catfish into this oil, because the catfish is cold, it's going to drop the temperature of the oil. And as we've said multiple times, you want that oil to be 350 degrees. So if we add too much in or overcrowd our fryer, well, what's going to happen? We're going to drop the temperature of the oil, and now it's not frying, it's boiling in the oil, and we don't want that. So now we just let this fry away, and it's going to be perfect. Don't mess with it too much. I got a little spoon here. Every now and then, I can give it a little stir, just to make sure nothing's sticking together, which we don't want. But what happens is, we stir this too much, you're actually going to start to break off that batter on the outside of the fish, and you're going to break that off, and now you're not going to have that batter no more, and we don't want that either. But again, very simple techniques. Clean oil, right temperature, catfish cut very thinly, nice crust. It's all gravy after that. It's going to be really easy. Just take a look at it. See, starting to fry up beautiful and golden. What we're looking to do is eventually it's going to kind of start floating. I actually like my catfish fried really, really crispy. So even once it floats, you give it another minute, it's going to be perfect. All right, take a look at this. Starting to get real crispy on the outside. The catfish is going to let you know when it's ready. It's going to become golden, crispy on the outside. If it starts getting too dark, well, then you know you've gone too long. So once you start getting that color, golden, that's what we're looking for. You're ready to start draining it right onto some napkins, just to soak up that little bit of extra oil that's out there. We don't want that. We want the fish, not the grease. Let it sit for a minute here, just to get rid of any of that extra grease, and then we're just going to serve this very simply. I'm going to stack this up on the plate. I have some tartar sauce here, so that's how I'm going to serve it, with some tartar. But of course, anything that you like is going to be perfect. I mean, you know, one thing I actually like to do oftentimes when I'm at a restaurant, and oftentimes they'll give you cocktail sauce and tartar sauce with your fried seafood. I mix the two. Pro tip, really good. But also, anytime we have seafood, never goes wrong with a little bit of lemon. Just a squeeze on there, a little bit of acidity. Acidity, seafood, always a match made in heaven. A little bit of fresh parsley on top, just ripped fresh off. Feel free to eat this. This isn't just a garnish to look pretty. Parsley is going to give a cleansing and vibrance effect whenever you eat your seafood. A little bit of pieces, it's almost like a salad, kind of cleansing your palate, adding a bit of freshness to it. And there you go, guys. Crispy fried catfish, thin cut, fried perfectly. You don't get any more Louisiana than that. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll have another recipe next week. See you then.